Okay, then we can dive in. Just to tell you a tiny bit about myself, in case you haven't been in any of my sessions. I am Erica Poplinsky-Burge. I've been teaching since 2005, and I spent 18 years teaching pre-K through 8th grade, so I have lots of experience. We are going to be exploring Voces por el Mundo en Voix du Monde. Please excuse my not great French accent. I was a Spanish teacher, and while I love our French title and series, and I'm excited to talk about it, I am sure that my French will not be as um, as on point as my Spanish. So this is Voces por el Mundo en Voix du Monde. Both of these titles have more than one level. Voces por el Mundo has one, two, three, and four. Voces por el Mundo 4 was just finished this year, so it's brand new, and I got to work on that one, so I'm pretty excited about it. And Voix du Monde has right currently one, two, and three for our levels. In both Voces por el Mundo and Voix du Monde, you have different levels, and I just wanted to show you what that looks like. This is Voces por el Mundo, and these are leveled articles, and we will get into these later. But this is an example of what a leveled article looks like at level 1, and you'll see it's very basic. If we were on the actual platform, which we will be soon, these blue words are hover text. They're words we're not sure the students will know, so you or the students can actually hover over them and the English will pop up. And then this is Voces por el Mundo level 4, just so you can see the difference in the complexity of the writing and the articles, so you can see that there is quite a variety in growth for students and availability in different levels for students. And another little thing I like to point out is once you have access to one level, like if you purchase Voces Pro Mundo 1, you have access to all levels within that title. So even if you are working at level 1, if you have students who are native speakers or fast processors and you need to draw from the upper level titles, you can. You can max, mix and match, and they are fully editable. So anything you see on here, you can edit or change or modify to meet the needs of your specific students. And this is from Voix du Monde, and this is level 1, and this is level 3. Again, just so you can see that there's a great variety in the complexity of language as the students progress through the levels. And I just want to also point out there are really interesting topics for students. You saw in Voces por el Mundo in our leveled articles, you saw in Voces por el Mundo, we have these runners from Mexico. These are native runners. And then we have this observatory in Chile, which is really interesting and also ties into the native people of the area. And in Voix du Monde, this first one is about henna tattoos. So we have a great variety of topics for students to read at all levels that are just appropriate for them. In both titles, Voces Pro Mundo and Voix du Monde, you'll see the setup is very, very similar. So you have this can-do pre-assessment, introduction to a country that speaks French or Spanish, your grammar topics, then you have videos and presentations that kind of help emphasize the grammar and vocabulary for the unit, activities for each, authentic resources for each. You have a travel section that travels through the country, cultural exploration, interviews, stories, a speaking section where students get to speak with another student, lecturas, lectures, which are those leveled readers, and we will go into all of these in great detail momentarily, kinesthetic activities, quizzes, a can-do checklist, and there's also a pre-assessment at the beginning, a can-do checklist post-assessment where they can see how they weighed in all the can-do assessments. These are fabulous for showing progress to parents or to administrators. There is their work overview or work summary, chapter vocabulary list, and then there's an exam and an integrated performance assessment. And these are the same in both titles. We are going to dive into both titles, and I'll show you half in Voces por el Mundo 1 and half in Voix du Monde. I was like, how do I say one in French? And I guess I didn't need to because I said one in Spanish. So I will show you half of this in the Spanish title and half of this in the French title, and then we'll talk about some extras in each. But just know, if you see it in the Spanish title, there is a similar section in the French title, so everything I say applies to both titles. In addition, both Voces por el Mundo and Voix du Monde have this teachers panel with some extra resources. And I did want to point out within the extra resources, there is everything from a comic strip to vocabulary list to KWL charts and graphic organizers. But there is also the pacing guide. And we are talking about pacing today, so that's kind of what I wanted to emphasize. The pacing guides are a really detailed breakdown of when to teach what for the first chapter of both titles. So these are great for you when you're getting started and trying to decide how to organize all this plethora of resources that we've shared with you. And because the format of every chapter is the same, if you need to, you can take this pacing guide and then apply it to the other chapters so that you'll have a really nice detailed kind of walkthrough for the year. Obviously, the amount of time you have your students, the amount of times you see your students is going to vary from school to school and teacher to teacher, so we'd want to adjust accordingly. But this pacing guide really lays out nicely how a chapter would look and can be applied to all subsequent chapters. And that's really good, especially when you're getting started with our resources, because we do give you a lot of resources, and this should help you to not feel overwhelmed and should really support you as you're kind of getting started and diving in. And don't worry, the presentation isn't over. We're going to now dive into Voces por el Mundo. And I'm going to show you that for a minute, and then we will go ahead and dive into Voix du Monde. So as you can see, here is what the whole title looks like. And then each section is broken down into chapters. Each chapter starts with a can-do pre-assessment, so students can go through and say where they're at the start of the chapter. Then, as they do activities that have can-do statements on them, they are prompted to answer the can-do statement after they've done the learning and done the activity. And at the very end of the chapter, in the can-do checklist, it will show where they're at. So that's a great way to measure progress, both, as I've said before, for administrators and parents, and for students to see where they're going. Each chapter, whether we're talking about Voces por el Mundo or Voix du Monde, starts with this introduction to a Spanish or French speaking country. It is filled with beautiful pictures that are designed to appeal to students, give you some interesting things to talk about, and make students curious about traveling the world and exploring the world. You can do lots of things with these pictures. You could just look at the pictures and talk about them. You could do a see, think, wonder, have students say what they see, what they think, what they wonder. You can compare it to some areas around where the students live. Or you could even play I Spy with these if you have a lower level class and you need to kind of do a fun game. There is no wrong answer here. But go ahead and check out those beautiful pictures. Then we have a little bit of country information. Again, this is the same in the French title. You get to see the flag. You get to see some information about the country. And then again, some more beautiful pictures, which you can do the same activities I mentioned with the earlier pictures. See, think, wonder, compare to what students see in their own countries. You could play an I Spy. You could just talk about what's in the pictures and what might interest the students. Down below, there is a map. I love looking at maps with students. And again, if you pull up a map of where the students live and compare it to this map of Mexico, you can ask students what they see on the map of Mexico. You can ask them what they see that's the same between where they live and Mexico. You can ask them what's different. It's a great way to start to make connections and help the students see that, Spanish or French is not just something that happens in the classroom, it's something that's happening all over the world, and to start to connect them to the world at large, which I love. And then down below, it asks them to say what they already knew about Mexico, what they learned about Mexico. In the earlier titles, these are in English. In the later titles, they are in the target language, so Spanish or French, respectively. And then down below, there is a little survey. These surveys are super fun. They say, would you like to visit Mexico? Yes. Do you like Mexican food? For me, the answer is yes. And what part of Mexico would you prefer to visit? The beach, the mountains in Oaxaca, the desert in Baja California, or the biggest city in North America, La Ciudad de Mexico? And actually, I'm going to have you go ahead and answer in the chat just so I can show you what you do with students here. Which part of Mexico would you prefer to visit? The beach, the mountains in Oaxaca, the desert in Baja California, or the biggest city in North America, La Ciudad de Mexico. So if you could answer in the chat for me which one you would prefer to visit, just so I can show you mountains in Oaxaca. Elise, I am usually a beach person, but I would also pick the mountains in Oaxaca. I was really lucky and got to study abroad in Mexico when I was in college, and Oaxaca was my favorite place in Mexico. I absolutely fell in love. We got a couple of different ones for mountains. Let's see what else we got. Beach. Beach. I would usually pick beach, Cesar. So what I would do in class is I would go ahead and have students answer on here, and then they submit. And when they submit, and it's not quite working, this new version, the surveys aren't quite popping up the way they're supposed to, but we are working on that and they will be popping up very soon. But when you submit these questions, it's actually going to give you a graph that shows you what students answered. So in class, we would, like, obviously I'm the only person answering this one, so there's only one person answering the mountains of Oaxaca. But in class, you could say, oh, 5 students want to go to Oaxaca. 7 students want to go to the beach. 8 students want to go to La Ciudad de Mexico. And then you could go and talk to the students. Oh, who wants to go to the beach? Can you tell me why you want to go to the beach? Who wants to go to Oaxaca? Can you tell me why you want to go to Oaxaca? And it's a great way not only to increase student interest, but also to get students talking to each other and making connections. Jacqueline says she likes to ask in the introduction pictures. Sorry, just gotta scroll up a little bit. What looks interesting? And then we go around and quickly and say that you could ride the bus to Machu Picchu or you could tour the volcano. So she likes to go ahead and talk with her students. I love that idea, Jacqueline. I also love the surveys. Thank you for sharing. But this is the introduction. And this is just, again, a great way to build community, to talk about numbers and authentic contacts, and to get the kids excited about the world. I'd like to point out down below, this yellow box is teacher only, so students can't see it unless you unlock it for them. And this just gives you a game suggestion for trivia night that would go well with this page. So if you wanted to go and explore this page, this could be really an entire lesson, and then go play trivia night with your students. That would be a really fun start to the year. Yes. Elise, after the students answer, Elise asks if after the students answer, the graph shows up right there on the page. It does after they submit. Right now, I have to submit and refresh, but that's only because of like a version 4 error that we just switched to. So they're going to fix that, and very soon after they submit, it will just pop up like it did above. And another handy thing is you can see if multiple people had answered this survey, each of the answers would be in different colors. So it's a great way to practice colors and authentic contacts in the classroom too. Kind of lots of things you can get at with one graph. From the country explorations, we go into the grammar topics. You can see for this first chapter, we have the alphabet, greetings, the numbers 0 to 30, and cognates. If we look at one of these pages, you will see that there's an explanation. There's a place for students to practice. Oops. There is an interesting picture to talk about. There is some native speaker audio.
Joe.
I don't think I shared my audio, so could you hear that? Okay, good. So there is some native speaker audio that students can access at home so they can hear it often, which we all know is important. There are some conversations that use some of the grammar mentioned. And then down at the bottom, there are a few more activities for the students to do to practice what they're learning. And finally, there is a game suggestion. So this page could in and of itself be its own lesson where you go through it with students, you have them do the exercises, you talk about their answers, and then you play the game at the end. Games are always a really solid way to reinforce learning and to end class in a fun way. So after this, you could continue to explore more grammar, though I would recommend going ahead and reinforcing this topic we've just looked at. If you go into, and again, I'll show you the pacing guide so we can get really in depth into, are there images on the Voces? Can you answer that, David? Because I'm not quite sure what's being asked. When you go into these are a great way to go ahead and reinforce what they just did with the grammar learning. And when you go to so are there images on the vocabulary? So let me show you, there's a couple of different things with vocabulary. In addition to this page that you can see here, which just have a few images You also have the presentation, and the presentation has images as well. And this reinforces what you just did. So this is greetings, and it talks about, it gives them a chance to practice saying hello to a classmate and to practice what they just learned with a little bit like with some very clear slides that you could either do with students or have students do on their own. And so these are the slides that go and reinforce the grammar page that we just looked at. And then, um, would it be possible to add a link to, so Jacqueline asks, would it be possible to add a link to a picture dictionary with and without words here? I generally switch tabs to a slideshow or image I've saved in the doc. You can add links to anything you want within the platform because it's fully editable. So if you have a picture, I'm sorry, I'm answering a question if that's not clear. If you have a picture dictionary you use, you could add a link to it and have it open up in another tab. So after the presentation, so we're all on the same grammar topic. We have the greetings, and this would be the same in French. We have the presentation. You then have all of these activities, and you can see on the activities what they cover. So these los saludos activities all go with that grammar that we just practiced. This little lightning bolt next to it means the activities on the page are auto-graded. And this like mountain means there's a can do statement that goes with the page. So if you went to Los Saludos here, you'll see that it is a matching, and students could go ahead and match all of the items in column A with the correct answer in column B. And again, this is reinforcing what they've just learned. They submit, and it will give them an automatic grade. So that is grading that you do not have to do, and it's all right there and done for you. And you can do as much practice as you want. You'll see that there's 11 different activities that go with greetings. And I would maybe do, 2 or 3 in class to have the students do a couple at home, watch the video and have them do a few more. You can do as many or as few as your students need, just based upon the needs of your students. We just want to provide you with lots of opportunities for practice so that you're meeting all of your students' needs. And then to reinforce the grammar a tiny bit more, we have, I don't know if it's not loading because of my internet. There we go. We have these amazing videos. Natalie, I see your question. I'll come back to you in just 1 minute. We have these amazing videos. These are made for us by, does this not work opening correctly? These are made for us by Spanish Playground, and they integrate the chapter grammar and vocabulary. And for some reason, oh, video saludos. There we go. That's what I was trying to load. My apologies. My internet's being a little bit funny. But there is a video, and it is not loading right now, and that may just be my internet is a little bit slow, but I will talk to Chris and make sure that it is there. The videos go with the grammar concepts that were just covered, and they are great for reinforcing the grammar vocabulary that was just covered and letting students hear native speakers using it in authentic context. The videos are very basic. They come with a transcript. And if the page was showing, you would see they also come with before and after video activities that allow students to really get into the video. Jacqueline says, beautiful images. Thank you, Jacqueline. We work really hard to make it so that the students can start to, find the images appealing and get interested about the world around them. So Natalie asks, what does the blue triangle mean? The blue triangle means that there's a can-do statement that comes with it. And you'll see the can-do statement is right at the top of the page. And when students click on it, it will have them go ahead and answer that. And so it will be an update from what they did in the very beginning, the pre-assessment. So they'll be able to see how they feel after the lessons. And then this is whatever they answer on the can-do statement within the title is what they will see at the can-do checklist at the end, their answers. And you also, Natalie also asked if there's a way to see if it is writing, speaking, listening. So when you go into the IPAs, then that will show you that it's interpretive reading and interpretive speaking and presentational speaking. So that's where it's really easy to kind of see at a glance what they are. But when you go to the pages, you'll be able to see more specifically what is on each page. So Those are our videos. Those are activities. And again, I'm not going into all of the grammar topics just because I want to make sure we have time to look at the French and all of the extras. This is just kind of an overview of what's available. Then we have our authentic resources. And you'll see again these blue mountains. These mean there's a can-do statement associated with the page. The orange lightning bolt means that there is a autograde on the page. And these are authentic resources that you can use with students, and they come with activities. This first one, since one of the activities was a one of the activities was the alphabet. This first one is a spelling bee contest. And I'm really confused as to why this is not loading because it was loading earlier today when I looked at this just a little while ago. But we will figure out what is going on. It will be fixed before the school year starts. This page should definitely be a spelling bee contest, which is great to go with the alphabet. This one is a marmalade or announcement. Oh, they load on your end. Just must be my internet. And I actually am hotspotting from my phone because my home internet was spotty. So my apologies. It's not the program, it's me. But they are there. They do have activities that go with the videos. The videos are authentic resources meant for Spanish speakers. These activities are meant to support students in their comprehensions. Martha says this is one of her favorite videos. I also love this video. It's fabulous. I would show you if there was time. And then there's a transcript that goes with the videos. Right now, the transcript, as you can see, it's yellow, so it's teacher only. But you could unlock the transcript and allow students to read it at the same time as they listen to it, which can sometimes help them quite a lot with their comprehension. I have to point out in this section is also, this is one of my favorite videos. It's about the Loteria de Navidad, which is the biggest lottery in the world. It takes place in Spain every year. And this one's about Justino. Every year they come out with amazing commercials right before the La Loteria in Spain, and they usually make me cry a little. And this one is a beautiful story, and it does make me cry a little, but in a good way. So this is a great one to do with your students. This is one of my favorite videos. But these are all in the authentic resources, and you also see that in the French title, which we're going to switch over to momentarily. In addition, we have a Viajamos por. Yay! Jacqueline says we added so many videos and we love it. I also love all the videos. I think they're fabulous for students, and students are so interested. In the We Travel Through section, which you also again have in the French title, you get a map of the country and some questions about the map to kind of get students oriented in the world. You have some beautiful videos or other informational texts about the area that you're traveling to. There is a panorama. The panoramas are fabulous for doing see, think, or wonder. You don't have to just sit there. You can look all around. Ooh, don't really need to look at the ground that quickly. That made me feel a little sick. But you can look all around. You can zoom in on things. You can do a see, think, wonder. You can play I Spy. Yes, Veo Veo. Jacqueline, that's one of my favorites. Playing I Spy is one of my favorites. You can even, with more advanced students, do 20 questions, which is kind of like I Spy, but they ask the person yes or no questions about what their item is in the picture. So there's a million things that you could do with these. And then there's also a travel guide for the country. That's about visiting different places. In the earlier titles, they are in English, and the later titles, they are in the target language. So we give you many opportunities for exploration of the country. We're about to switch over to French, but just two other things I want to show you. There is a cultural exploration, and again, all of this is in the French title as well. In the first chapter for Voces por el Mundo, it's holidays and art, and each of these are a cultural exploration of the different topics. And then here you see there's also a fun guacamole recipe. I mean, who doesn't like guacamole? And there is a little bit about tortilla mexicana. So you could actually go over these and then have your students make them in class. Up next, there are interviews with native speakers from all over the Spanish or French speaking world. They tell you a little bit about the speaker. She talks about a topic of interest. The speakers know, like, we created these interviews for Voces por el Mundo, so they try and speak at an appropriate pace. However, anywhere where you see longer native speaker audio, you're going to also get this settings wheel, and you can speed up or slow down the audio to meet the needs of your students. So that way everyone can listen to it at a rate that's just right for them. You will see that there's questions to answer about her interview, as well as a transcript, which again, you could unlock for the students if you want them to be able to read and listen at the same time. Sometimes that's really nice. And after they get to listen to the two interviews with the Spanish speakers, there is, of course, a and you section where they get to go ahead and answer those same questions themselves. So they were listening, and then they get to practice outputting. Finally, before we switch over to French, you have two different stories that you can do with students that focus on chapter themes, vocabulary, and grammar. And we're going to look at those a little bit more on the French side because I want to make sure that I am not just doing Spanish. Spanish is my comfort area because that's what I taught, but the French program is fabulous too. Here's Voix du Monde. Again, please excuse my French. I know it is not as good as my Spanish. So in here you can see it is the exact same lineup as you will see in the Voces por el Mundo title. You get to explore the French-speaking country with beautiful images that are designed to appeal to students. Here you have your grammar topics. You have your videos and presentations, just like you did in the Spanish title. You have all of your activities, just like in the Spanish title. This is an auto grade. This is a can do. You have your authentic resources, your voyage through France, your cultural exploration, your interviews, and your story. I want to point out in both the Spanish and French titles, the stories have before and after story activities so that students are prepared and ready to read the story. So there's warm-up activities, there's the actual story that comes with these beautiful pictures. Oh, I'm so sorry. I have to kick my dog out. Just 1 second. Let me get rid of the dog. My apologies. My very large German Shepherd was sleeping innocently on the bed until a squirrel got too close to the house. So I had to kick her out and we can get back into it. I didn't feel like you needed loud dog barking for the rest of the presentation. So here you'll see this beautiful story with the pictures and again the native speaker audio. You can print the story so students can follow along and even notate in their stories. You'll see there's the game suggestion. Again, this story could easily be an entire lesson where you do the pre-story activities and then do the story and then play a game. The next day you could come back to the story and review it. And then there are also post-story activities. You're welcome. Marta says she doesn't remember seeing the warm-up activities. I am happy that I showed them to you because they make the story go a lot smoother. And then down here are your post-story activities. Up next, this is your Jacqueline says, if I have a Spanish student who would like to learn French, is it possible to give them access to work through it independently? David, I'm sure will give you a great. David's got that one in the chat, so he's going to answer you, and I'm going to keep going so we can get through everything. But in here, you have your personal questions, and then this is one of those sections where you know speaking is coming up. In this Voces por el Mundo, the section is Vamos a charlar, which is we're going to chat. Here, I'm not even going to attempt to say that because I don't want to slaughter it. But this is the speaking section where you're going to have your personal questions, and then you have interpersonal speaking where they go ahead and speak with a classmate, and they can record themselves right in there, and it gives you a prompt and a grading rubric. And then there's a presentational speaking for students to speak on their own. And again, you get the exact same thing in the Spanish titles. In the lectures, these are one of my favorite features of the Voces of the World series. The lecturas or the lectures are leveled articles that apply to a topic of interest for the country of focus. Now they are version A, which is the basic version B, which has more of the information, and version C, which has the full story. If we just show students version C, unless they are really, really confident in their language learning, it has been my experience that they will feel really overwhelmed and be like, oh my gosh, that's too much, I can't do it. But if we start with version A and build this up so that they feel very confident, then version B looks less intimidating, and then they're going to feel even more confident with version C. One thing that I like to do with my students is I will read it in Spanish. Oh, and I don't even know if I want to attempt this one, but I will read it in the target language, and then I will point at the words, and the students will say the English. So Marie I'm sorry, it was Marie Curie. I'm not even going to try it. Something scientifique.
Était scientifique. Elle a
Oh,
étudié.
merci, merci. So I would do that. I would read that to them in French if I spoke French as beautifully as you do, and then I would point at the words and have them say the English. Marie Curie was a scientist, and have them say the English. This is really great when your students are first starting out reading for helping your slower processors to feel really, really strongly that they understand what's going on. So version A, I would go through the whole text like that. And then you could answer the questions as a group or have them answer on their own. These are just true false. Version B has a little bit more information, and you can decide to do it, just read it to your students or go over it more slowly, as I just did, so they feel more confident. And then the questions are a little bit trickier or a little higher level. And then version C is the whole version. And then you get to go through the higher level questions where the students are actually producing the answers. So these are amazing to use to build up students' ability to read. One other way I've used these really successfully is to, and Martha, I see your question, I'll come back to it in 1 second, is to print the page and then have version A be all on one page, version B be all on one page, and version C be all on one page, and let students self-scaffold. Tell them we're all going to read about Marie Curie, and I want you to pick the version that's just right for you. And I love watching students self-scaffold. They're really, really good at picking the one that they feel confident about. I would do this after you've done a few of these articles so the students are feeling good about their reading. But it's really interesting to see what version the students choose. Kind of gives you an idea of how they're feeling about their reading. But one of my favorite things to see is when a student is super excited about a topic and you have someone who's a slower processor or struggles with reading, pick the version C because they're so excited about the topic. And I love empowering those students to dive into the more difficult reading. So this is another way you can use these really successfully in class. And Marta, whether or not you use them all, Marta asked if I use them all. It really just depends on how much time you see your students and what you think will be most interesting to your students. If you have all the time, then I would use them all. But if you have a limited time, I would just pick what you think will be most helpful to your students. And I will show you a pacing guide that kind of shows you what we suggest, but really it's depends upon the student's heart in front of you. After the leveled articles, we have some kinesthetic activities that are kind of off-screen activities to get students up and moving around the room. And then we have the quizzes, and the quizzes are on the grammar and vocabulary topics we saw earlier. They're short. This one, as you can see, is auto-graded. You have the can-do checklist at the end, which will show how they did and all of the can-dos throughout the units. You have the vocabulary list. Students can access that and hear all the vocabulary at any time. You have the chapter exam. Right now it's in teacher only mode, so the students can't see it earlier. This page is auto-graded. This one's a speaking page, so it's not auto-graded. And then you have an integrated performance assessment or IPA that gives you a context for the assessment, and then it gives you interpretive reading, interpersonal speaking, and presentational writing. So there is a lot in there. We give some really supportive teacher guides on how to do this successfully with students so that they feel really confident when they're getting into some of those big tests that level their language skills. I have a few more things to show you. I'm going to switch back to the Spanish title, but the things I'm going to show you are available in both titles. Most of them, anyway. If you go to the very bottom, this is something brand new that we just, like I actually just finished adding these on Friday, so I'm super excited about them. We added a project-based learning activity to every level, every language. And so there is a really nice teacher guide that kind of walks you through it. Project-based learning can be done on the computer or off the computers. There's a printable teacher guide. Everything's printable. Each language, each level of each language has a different theme. Oh, Marta says she can't wait, and Jacqueline's excited too. I am also very excited about these. I worked very hard on these this summer. Um, and they each have a different theme. This one is Welcome to Our School. And it's because I picked this one for the first level because the reason we do language is to communicate, right? Many, many years ago, my students were virtually interviewing a National Geographic photographer. I talked him into talking with my students via Skype at the time. And one of the things he said was, and he was someone who he goes into like the mountains in Asia and photographs like really remote populations of people who are in difficult locations to get to. And he says, people always ask me how I capture the spirit of the people that I'm taking pictures of. He has beautiful pictures. His name's Matthew Paley. And he said, it's because I talk to the people and I get to know who they are. And he said, you don't need to travel to remote places to get to know new people and to get to experience new things. You just need to go and talk to your neighbor and actually listen to them. And I feel like during COVID and during our time kind of apart, we lost that ability to talk to people and to build our community. And so this first project-based learning really focuses on community and building community within your school. So it gives you driving questions. And the driving questions here are, how can we help students get to know and welcome others to our school? How can we celebrate the cultures represented in our school community? And how can we better the communication between students and staff? And so it gives students some some ways they can get through this project. It gives them suggestions, and there's project guides for students, and they can pick different final projects, and then they can present them to the class. I would say this for near the end of the year, but each of these projects are designed to increase student learning, to follow student interest, to allow students to explore the world around them and the world right around them, not just, distant places, and to build community and to get students to be able to express themselves creatively. So I am super excited for these, and I hope these are helpful for all of you. These are in both the French and Spanish and German and Italian and English titles. So all of the titles. Both titles also have this appendix, which has different things like a student survey in it. They have a cultural exploration at the end, which allows you to explore different cultures or different celebrations throughout the year. So, like on Day of the Dead, you probably want to go over that on the Day of the Dead. So, these are kind of at the end so that you can hit them whenever it makes sense to hit them in your year. And then finally, the only thing that we have in the Voces por el Mundo series and not the Voix du Monde series is we also have Go Vive a Tu Manera, which is a Netflix series that is meant for kids who are students in Argentina, like high school kids in Argentina. And we have all of these activities that help students to comprehend this series. It's actually on Netflix. What happens when students get into this series is they usually start getting so excited that they go and watch it at home, and they'll go ahead of class, which is great because then that's just extra language, exposure at home. So this is a really fun one. Unfortunately, we only have this available in our Spanish series because it's meant for Spanish speakers, but this is another great way that teachers can, extend student learning. So in addition, and then we'll look at the pacing guide because I know this is all about pacing. I did want to make sure that if there's a topic that you want to teach about that is not in the title you're using, you can use this search tool, and you could search up, like, for example, street art, and it is going to show you where that is in any of the titles. So if you want to talk about street art, but there is nothing in your title, you can look and see where it is in another title. You can go there, and then you could just use that with your students, or you could even import it into your title and then modify it to be appropriate for your students. So anything you want to teach about, if it's in one of our titles, you have access to it. You can move it, you can modify it, you can assign it however you need to. We also have a fabulous game center that is in both titles. All of these games are great for students, both as warm-ups or for extensions or for things to do at home. Look at it if you have not explored it. I highly recommend. We have sets created for all of our chapters already. And with Blookit, you pick a set and then you say create games, and it will give you a whole set of games students can play on their own or games you can play as a class. Both are fun. With the on your own games for students, I will usually extend those to last as long as possible and just leave the links up. And even in my building where it was a no homework building, I had students going and playing Blooket around 500 times a week because they were having so much fun playing it. And that's lots of extra like free vocabulary or grammar practice that you can have the kids doing at home. So all of that is here, as well as a teacher game guide to help you kind of get the most out of your sessions. Now, coming back to my slideshow, you will see that there is a very in-depth pacing guide for both of these. The pacing guide is in the resource center, which again I will show you momentarily. But you'll see for this one on the left is Voces por el Mundo. You can see we recommend spending about 10 minutes on the can do pre-assessment. It tells you what students have to do. 10 minutes on the introduction to Mexico, though honestly that page has so much rich material, I would probably spend a little more time on that. Oh, there's the rest of it. 50 minutes on the introduction to Mexico, and you project those for the class. 15 minutes with students logging in and doing the survey and then talking about the survey, and then exit ticket. The exit tickets I'll show you in just a moment. Those are in the resource center and those are brilliant in their own right. And you have a very similar setup right here for Voix du Monde. And you'll see that right in the kind of the far right column, it tells you what you'll need to do. And for this first lesson, the only thing you really need to prep ahead of time was printing out that exit ticket. So this in-depth pacing guide can be found in both titles under the resources. And it's right here. And so you can just click it and it will open up for you. And it kind of tells you what's in a chapter, outlines what's in each section. And then it goes through your first couple of weeks of lessons, how to get through an entire chapter. These are just suggestions. Obviously, you should modify it for the students that are in front of you. If, like Marta was saying, she has block schedules and she sees her students all the time, maybe you're using all of the things. But if you only see your students twice a week, every so often, like I only saw my students because I was elementary twice a week for 36 minutes, which is not very much time, I would not be using all of the things. But this just gives you a guide that you can then apply to other chapters that will make life a lot easier if you are brand new to Voces, because we do have a lot of materials available. And that's the only downfall, is that sometimes that can be overwhelming. But as long as you are supporting your students and meeting them right where they're at, there's really no wrong way to do it. In this resource center, you will also see these are the exit tickets. That's what it was talking about in the pacing guide. There's different exit tickets, but these are wonderful. You just print these up and have the students fill them out in the last 2 minutes of class. They put their name, they mark how well they understood the lesson for the day, and then here they kind of tell you about what they learned for the day. I will tell you, I let my students do this in English and a mix of English and Spanish or all in Spanish. How they choose to answer me really tells me a lot about where they are in their language learning journey. If I said, okay, what did we talk about today? And they're able to tell me all of what we talked about in English. Well, that's a step on the language learning journey. That's not nothing. I spoke to them in Spanish and they understood. They couldn't output in Spanish, but they were able to tell me what it was. So that's a step on the language learning journey. When if they answer in a mix of Spanish and English, that means that not only do they understand, but they're starting to be able to output. If they can answer all in basic Spanish, that's yet another step along the way. And if they can answer in Spanish with lots of interesting details, that tells you where they're at too. So that's a really great way. I had like 800 students and I could look through these really, really fast at the end of class and just pull out a few that, like, okay, these kids need some extra support. These kids need some extra challenges, and know really easily right where all of my students were at. Another tip I always like to give with these exit tickets is that I always tell my students on the back, they can write down and tell me anything they want to tell me. And I do that because sometimes students really want to share something with you that's personal, but they don't want to say it in front of the whole world. And it really gives you a chance to connect with your more, introvert students. And Jacqueline says when you print them, you can do 2 per page, 4 per page, etc. Thank you, Jacqueline. That's very helpful, especially because, printing takes forever and copying takes forever and all of that. We also have in here comic strips, which are a great way for students to retell stories or retell what they've learned. Graphic organizers, and this is all the same in the French title, KWLs, suggestions for when tech fails, rejoinder posters that you can print. And then one of my favorite things that I also Marta, I also love the comic strips. Those are one of my favorite things to do with students. One of the other things I worked on over the summer is that there are really, really very easy, like kind of plug and go substitute teacher plans. Because I know as a teacher myself, when I wake up in the morning and I feel bad enough that I don't want to go to school, the last thing I want to do is to panic write like 3 hours of lesson plans. So I created these lesson plans over the summer. They are meant to go with any story or any cultural article, and they're meant to be really plug and go. Like you can just put in a few little things, spend like 10, 20 minutes on them, give them to your substitute teacher, and then you should be able to take your time to recover as needed. So these are in there too, and I hope that they are a gift and make your life a little bit easier this school year when you are not feeling your best. So these are the main things I wanted to show you, and we have about 10 minutes. So I want to make sure I am also taking time for questions. I talked really fast and threw a lot at you. So what questions do you have for me? I'm going to try and give appropriate wait time because sometimes that's hard for me when we're virtual.
I'll be the brave one that unmutes.
Woo!
Um, so one thing that I came in and replaced a teacher last year, and so this will be my second year teaching. And is it expected for Voces por el Mundo for Spanish 1 to get through the entire Spanish 1 book, like get through all of Voces por el Mundo 1, and then Spanish 2 is Voces por el Mundo 2, and so on and so forth? Or is it okay to split up the books? So, like I did this past year, I was only able to get through half of Voces por el Mundo 1 with Spanish 1. And then I plan on doing the other half this coming year with Spanish 2 with the second half of the book. Is that okay to do? Is that what it's intended to do? Or is it truly to be book 1 is for Spanish 1, book 2 for Spanish 2 kind of thing?
That is an excellent question, and thank you for being brave and speaking. And the answer is yes, basically to both of the questions. And really, there's no wrong way to do it. It's just always progressing at the pace that's appropriate for your students. I know many districts that will split Voces Pro Mundo 1 into 2 years because there is so much to cover there. But some districts will just cover less and just use Title 1 for Level 1. So it's really up to you. If I had my choice, I would probably just do half a book the first year and then half a book the second year, just so you're giving students as much time as possible to kind of dive into things and get extra repetitions and to acquire the language. But it really just depends upon the needs of your district. So either way can work. I feel personally, my choice would be to cover half a title year one, half a title year two, but really it depends upon the needs of your district. I hope that
Perfect.
was
Yeah, thank
clear.
you.
No problem. What other questions do we have? Thank you, Jacqueline. That's very helpful. She says they do have to keep a good pace and hustle to complete 10 units in a year. So her district looks like they complete 10 units in a year, and you can totally do that. It really just depends upon the needs of your students and how deeply you want to dive into the resources within each chapter. There's no wrong answer, but thank you, Jacqueline. That was very helpful.
I would love to spend more time, but I feel like if they're going to take Spanish 2, 3, and 4, like there's certain things that we have to cover before then. And being an introduction, I tell them, there's lots more in here. We can't do it all. And I pick and choose and sometimes ask them what they want to do. But I feel like they do need that introduction to all 10 units before moving on next year. And some won't, they'll just take 1 year, some will take all four. But our older teacher who did Spanish 3 and 4, he was native from Uruguay and he retired and they didn't replace him. So now our 3 and 4 are online with a study skills teacher. And I don't know what sequence they use. We haven't had a whole lot of time to correlate. That last year was the first one, and our preps didn't line up. So I just want to give them as much as I can before they go do that or go to college. But it is hard to squeeze it, and we're on block, so I usually take about 3 weeks to do a chapter.
Thank you, Jacqueline. That's very helpful.
Mhm.
Marta, did you have something you wanted to share too or could share as well?
I have a quick question. The way my classes are labeled, a little different than all the other nationwide, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In my district, we have regular Spanish learners, almost always Anglo-Saxon, exposed to the language slowly for the past few years. And we have what's heritage or native speakers. My question, the seventh grade teacher in my building has done Por el Mundo Uno. Now with the new changes for Por el Mundo 4, do you have any suggestions for me? I do not want to do a repeat of last year for my incoming eighth graders. And I haven't had the time to really look at all the changes for El Mundo 4. Do you think that would be like a good start for me?
So you're
Most of my native speakers, they speak rather well. My biggest issue with them is their grammar. So they are afraid to read and they are afraid to show their knowledge. So this is like my agony with them. I want to say novice learners, I would probably have to start with like Nuestra Historia Uno with them. I looked at you primaria. I am loving every page. So I might be copying some of that into my novice learners. And I do have, they call it in my area, like special ed students classified. So those primaria will be like really, really amazing for differentiation. And thank you for the long question. Like,
no problem. That is, you have quite a diverse array of learners, and I have
yes,
been there. Um, so you are looking specifically to ask what would be good for your heritage students?
yes.
Okay, so I would draw on things in Voces por el Mundo 3 and 4.
Okay.
I would, it just really depends upon, because it's been my experience. I was pre-K through eighth grade, so I don't know about you, but it was my experience with heritage speakers that they spoke beautifully, but a lot of the times they did not get a lot of practice reading.
Yes, that's my problem. Yes.
Yeah, they needed more practice reading.
hmm
What titles are you currently using in class again with your with the general population?
I last year I did Nuestra Historia Uno and I did Por el Mundo Uno.
Okay, so I would definitely draw from Por el Mundo dos, tres, and cuatro for extra reading for those students. And also,
Okay.
you could draw from 2, 3, or 4 in Nuestra Historia for extra reading for them as well. In the Voces por el Mundo tres, any of the cultural explorations would probably be really good for them. As well as we have, this is kind of a fun feature I added in 3 and 4. There's a focus on a musician from each
Okay.
Spanish speaking country. So that's kind of a great way for them to, oh, that's a really exciting topic. And then they can listen to some of the
hmm
music. So I would look at using some of those for those students, because then
Perfect.
they can, assess on their own. There's
Yes.
also novels embedded within the Nuestra Historia series. So I might try a novel and a book group with those students, where they
Yes.
read
Okay.
the novel in a group, and then you can have them do some of the assignments that go with it. And then the other thing that would be helpful for those students is in the introduction, we have a podcast with Marta.
Yes,
Yeah,
I've done those.
I
Love
love
it.
those
Yes,
podcasts.
yes. I
So
love
those are
them.
great too. For those are extensions that I often will use with my heritage speakers when they need a little something extra, but I can't give them all the attention. So I would definitely assign them some of that reading, starting lower and then progressing as needed in those upper series. That would be a great way to challenge.
Perfect. I appreciate your suggestions. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for your question. We've got about 2 minutes left. We have a comment. There's an introductory French book that is used for grade 7, and then they use Voix du Monde for French 8, and then they can skip the first units because they've got them in introductory, and that helps them with the proficiency test in New York, which is fabulous and helpful. Are there any other questions? Oh, we got one new. Oh, Claudia is asking Martha a question if she's still here. She's asking if she uses Voces for her heritage class curriculum.
Yes, I do.
The,
Yeah, I'm a Voces queen. I do everything with Voces.
I love that.
And
Yes.
I've used the AP also, the AP title for those I challenge my students to like, yes, you can, and they're able to. And I think for me, the biggest struggle is their grammar. They are very, very weak in their grammar. And like I said earlier, they are afraid to read. They are embarrassed to read. But I think I've used all the titles and I usually challenge them and I walk my way backwards.
Thank you. That is so helpful. And reading is really the key to getting them good at grammar. So there's tons and tons of reading you can assign throughout to the others. So the podcasts are not related. One final question, then we got to wrap it up because the time is over. But the podcasts are not related to the chapter vocab. These are done separately by Martha, and she talks about a wide variety of things. So I would go ahead and go to her podcast series, and you'll see that there's all sorts of different topics in her podcast. There's almost 200 of them. She does it the first time more slowly with some like support in meaning, and then she says the podcast a second time at a pace that's appropriate for native speakers. So these podcasts are a great extension activity for students that need it. And they're all built in for you with some activities that you can use at different levels. My time for this session is up. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. I know it is valuable. I hope that it was helpful, and that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for being here.